And I currently work as the head of systems for an organization within the arms industry. And it's just in those walking down that path with everyone and just feeling stuck, and feeling like this will be it for the rest of your life. That's when I was just like, okay, maybe it's time to jump ship and do
Yeah.
that master's and see where it will take you.
One. We are up. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the GeoHabari podcast. I'm your host, Yeri Wakitio, and I'm pretty excited about this new episode. And this week, we're going to have a very interesting conversation, and it's really a conversation around our careers as GIS techies navigating the broader tech world, lessons learned, career traumas maybe, and also talking about positioning yourself within the industry, especially how with how tech and management is evolving over time. We thought that's also something that we should talk about and give our thoughts on as sort of girlies or big sisters. So yeah, this is a Millennial edition that just focuses on our journeys. Yeah, so I have with me today Njeri. Hi Njeri.
Hi, May.
I'm so happy to have you. This is for guys who've not listened to our previous episode. This is the second time Njeri is on here. So I'll have Njeri introduce herself if you haven't listened to the other episode, and then we'll get into the conversation about tech and careers.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you for having me again. This has been long overdue, and I'm really excited for the work you're doing. Before I start, I would just like to really thank you for starting out this kind of podcast that reaches out to the continent and lets not just Kenyans but Africans everywhere really know what to expect in the industry and how to position themselves as they move forward in their geospatial career journeys. So good job. I really like the
Oh,
podcast.
thanks, Njeri.
So to start off, maybe I can give a brief about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe for a start, like you can give us your sort of your transition into the different roles you've had. And yeah, just for us to get perspective of what you currently do and where you've come from through this journey.
So let me start with the end. What I currently do, I am a data enthusiast with a focus on the geospatial development. And I currently work as the head of systems for an organization within the arms industry, Conflict Armament Research, whose primary objective is simply to generate unique evidence on weapon supplies into armed conflicts in order to inform and support effective weapon management and control. Here, the main objective where we map out the supply chain of these illicit weapons from the point of use, tracking their sources back through the supply chain. And my role specifically in the company has been as the head of systems to oversee all the technological infrastructure that governs our data ecosystem. So think of it as the tools and technologies that are built to ensure high quality data flow from the point of ingestion from field teams all the way through to analysis and QA and to dissemination to our partners. Now, that's what I currently do. It's not a very normal or generic role, I would
Nothing
say.
generic about it.
And it has been an interesting journey, I would say. Never expected to be working in this particular industry. I started out in my undergrad here in Jomo Kenyatta University as a geospatial engineer with the hopes and promise of being an astronaut.
Ooh, everyone normally has that.
So I used to hope one day that I will work in the space industry, and the only available course that was out there that had anything to do with satellite related information was the geospatial industry. So it was geomatic engineering. So I did that, quickly realized that that was mainly focused on survey. So going to the road, kupima shamba, as they
Oh
say, and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Um, and for a while, I did that interning for the Kenya Rural Roads Authority, worked with other organizations in the government, so Kenya Forestry, and heavily focused on survey as well as the geospatial industry. And then I quickly realized that this is not the astronaut mission I had wished to accomplish.
Yeah.
But fortunately enough, there was a project that came up, and I think you've had the guest before on your podcast here, Charles Mwangi. There was
Oh
an
yeah.
interesting project that came up to for Kenyan university students to launch a satellite. So I was nominated as part of that program and did a master's in space mission and design, launched a satellite, which was quite fun, closer to my aims and objectives. But I also quickly realized that the Kenyan industry is still developing in that sector, and I wanted to venture out to focus more now on the geospatial industry. So I jumped ship again
Yeah.
from space mission. So we were in survey first, we went to space mission design and management, building satellites, and now we are back in geomatic
Yeah.
engineering. Did a master's in geoinformatics, with the main focus being like a geospatial developer, so just programming around spatial tools. And it was with this particular master's that I managed to jump into the current role that I am in my job right now. But before this master's, I was also with Esri Eastern Africa for a period of around 2 years as a solution engineer. So that, yeah, not the straightest linear path,
Yeah.
but I would say it was mainly following my, like, where I felt I was lacking and I needed passion. So I started out with survey and I was like, not for me,
So you
not
are doing like
interesting.
an elimination, like, and your what you're using is your passion. What are you drawn to decide if you're staying or not?
Exactly. Well, maybe not passion, but also it's what I'm interested in, but also what I'm not interested in.
Mm.
So very early on in my career journey, when I was doing my internship as a surveyor in Kenya Rural Roads Authority, I witnessed the most horrific accident, and the day-to-day work as a surveyor just did not sit well with me, and it felt like I cannot see myself working in this particular domain for the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life.
Okay.
And then that's when I decided, let me start trying to pursue the GIS part, which is the geospatial information systems and the remote sensing side. And that's how I got knowledge of the opportunity for space mission design. And I was like, this is now one of my passions. So I jumped into that, hoping that I will go further into that industry. But beyond the fact that it wasn't fully developed in Kenya, as well as the fact that there was so much that I didn't know as a baseline astronomy, all the different information around satellite telemetry, all that information. There was so much baseline information that I didn't know, and it felt a bit daunting to venture too much into that direction. But also, just touching on the passion bit, like doing something you think is your passion and then realizing maybe it's actually not totally your passion, is also very crucial there. Because, like, I studied it out thinking it was the way for me, and then I quickly realized maybe it's actually not for me. And then now that's when I jumped to geomatics.
I like that your journey is not linear, which gives a lot of perspective in what's possible and the different paths that guys can create for themselves. So, which brings me to, before we get deep into the conversation, I want us to have like a quick fire for us to sort of create a runway for this conversation and get into the particular defining moments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. The first one I think I'd want to know is, in your journey and where you're at now. You're now head of systems, and we've talked about how that transition happened over time. What conversations are you scared of having at work
At what?
as a head of
Where
systems?
am I? Interesting. What conversations I'm scared of having at work? I mean, there's the obvious conversations, that, let me position myself as what I am right now as the head of tech, is if you're running a team, the biggest thing that I would fear is if a company has to downsize or restructure and
Ah,
basically have to tell people that we're going to lay off people. Retrenchment and laying off and just firing is not an easy discussion.
yeah,
Luckily, I've never
never.
had to do that so far in my journey, but I think that's, to me, is the most daunting discussion, because you know that it has an impact in someone else's life.
That's very interesting. Mine has always been anything to do with money. I'm still trying to figure out how to
Hmm.
get comfortable in those conversations, but because currently I'm like head of data, and that means I'm not very comfortable yet when it comes to salary reviews. And when someone brings that up, and I'm not well prepared, that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I'm still very scared of talking about. Well, yeah, that's, but we'll get to that. We'll get to salaries and appraisals.
Yeah, because
Um,
it's interesting. I wanted to just find out for you, when you say money, is it money with you sitting on the table of the negotiator as you actually asking for the raise, or is it you sitting on the opposite side of the
on
table?
the opposite side, like
I see.
someone in my team asking for a raise.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, I think we should discuss that.
yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely
Yeah.
should. Then have you had any traumas tied to your career transition?
Traumas.
Yeah. So basically, career traumas where you probably felt like, oh my God, I'm probably stagnating. Oh my God, this is not what I want. Oh my God, like those, oh
I
my God moments
see.
where it's like, I am so scared of this. I don't know
Yeah.
what's next. Like in limbo. And why I'm asking that is I know after campus I had that
Uh-huh.
because I had no idea what I was getting into or what the space looks like. Yeah.
Interesting. I was quite nervous when you said you have a rapid section question, because I have not thought about. But I like that question. I like it very much because traumas sometimes are a pivotal point for where you start changing and shifting and pivoting, where you want to change your mindset, your career, and everything. And I would say I have had maybe two traumas, I would say. The first one, I briefly touched on it, was when I was doing survey, and every single day would entail waking up early in the morning, from 5 a.m., getting on a matatu for a 4 hour drive to some remote location, and then every evening, doing that 4 hour drive back home. And that continuous, repeated lifestyle of every day was daunting enough. But the day it actually hit that I did not want to do survey work was when I saw the accident.
Oh.
We were on site, and there was a very gruesome accident where a truck lost control because it didn't have brakes. And just witnessing that and how it was managed in the process, me being one of the head in the survey group, just completely put me off, like freaked me out.
Mm.
And I was like, I am not sure if I can handle such kind of adversities in this job. And just being told by my seniors that is a common occurrence in road types of work, in
Oh my
survey,
God.
in civil engineering, to expect certain fatalities and how to approach them. And I was not sure that this is the
Yeah.
trajectory I would actually want to see. So that was a huge trauma that shifted me from, like, we're not doing survey anymore, we're
We're
going
doing
into
that.
geospatial.
Ah, okay.
And I was like, mm-mm. Do I have another trauma? I'm not too sure. But I think it's just that mundane. You know how you picture your life, and then you see something very cyclic and repetitive, and it's not interesting.
Yeah.
And I think in my career, in my very first like proper position with Esri in Africa, where I would walk from work from Upper Hill to town. We would walk because we want to avoid traffic. And it's like this statistics of all these people moving with their exhaustion at 5 p.m. in the same direction every day. And I think that started getting to me. It's like, this is, if I stick here for the long run, this is going to be my life, where at 5 p.m. I don't like the fact that I'm working till this time, and then I have to walk all this way every evening thinking about the type of work I was doing. And I don't know, it just got to me.
Yeah.
It just got to me. And at that time I was trying to make a hard decision of whether I want to leave a stable career, pursue a master's. And it's just in those walking down that path with everyone, and just feeling stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like this will be it for the rest of your life. That's when I was just like, okay, maybe it's time to jump ship and do that
Yeah.
master's and see where it will take me.
I like that because, like, most of the time when you're trying to figure out, and why that's very important for you to say that is like what I noticed when I look at some of the majority of our listeners are guys who are just getting into the job market. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that's the same like conversation I always had with myself in my head. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, when do I know when to jump ship? When do I know
Exactly.
when to? And I like that you've brought that up. Like for you, it was that transition, and then you were like, okay, this is a routine that I don't really want to stick to. I would
Yeah.
want to jump shift. And then the last one is this one is easy. What's the one
Ish.
thing you can't miss in your bag? What's the one thing you'd carry from home
Yeah.
to abroad if you were to leave because you
Oh,
know
from
you would
home to
need it?
abroad.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's sausages because
Everyone
that
says that.
everyone says that.
Okay.
Farmers' choice sausages, just because. I mean, from home to abroad. Yeah, but in my bag, in my purse, like every single day for me, it's hand cream. I do not know
Mm.
why, but I cannot. Like for the life of me, the way you have a phone, hand cream is the other thing that I have to carry with me. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so thanks, Jerry. This was quite interesting to know some of your answers to this question. So I'm glad. I feel like I know you better. Oh yeah, so we'll get into the career bit and like what you've talked about on like your transition and what you're currently doing. And I think I'd want us to start with opportunities when it comes to hiring. Right? We are both in the geospatial field, and for me, what I connected with and why I thought this conversation is central to have is
Mm.
like as head of systems, and I think it's pretty important to talk about how do you position yourself when it comes to your career, when it comes to presenting yourself in a CV, when it comes to you applying for a job with the background of what we know, right? We are geospatial professionals navigating in a very tech driven world, and sometimes we tend to sort of self sabotage by
Mm.
how we apply for these opportunities. So I think for a start, I'd like to get your thoughts on, with you sitting as a hiring manager, what advice you'd give to job seekers. What does that look like? What are the things you've seen over time in CVs and when you're hiring people, when you're
Mm-hmm.
negotiating and someone is on the other side and they're trying to get that job? Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
tips around that within your transition?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Maybe let me start off with just a few tips before going into discussing the actual job application and the
Yeah.
resumes. It's very important to figure out what you don't want to do.
Mm,
I think in this, and I can empathize with a lot of people right now with how difficult it is to get employment with all the tech layoffs happening right now. um, People will really just be struggling to get any job and to just jump in. And fine, it's important to get a job that actually pays you enough to survive, but it's important to also draw the line on what you don't want to do, because
mm,
then you'll only become disgruntled and you'll hate the work, and you'll start looking for another job the minute you're in that job. And so, I mean, starting from what you don't want to do is always where I would advise, because you do not really know the rest. Like maybe there are like three different types of jobs, and you can somehow achieve tasks in all of them, but you don't really know what it's offering until you're in it, right?
yeah.
But you actually know what you don't want to do. In my case, I would not apply for a survey position
Oh, because you
because
know.
I know I don't want to do that. But I
Yeah.
can apply for a geospatial analyst, I can apply for a geospatial developer, I can apply for. So I don't know whether a geospatial analyst will offer me better opportunities or I'll be more interested in it, but it's something that maybe I want to do. So
Yeah.
that's why I would start off. But then, okay, now when applying, I would say the first thing is peer into the perspective of the organization. The organization, they are a business with a budget and with a business need, and the business need is that they need you to fill in this position for certain deliverables. So when you're marketing yourself, you need to understand that you're an asset to this business, and you
Oh, I
need to
like
market
that.
yourself in a position that you're not begging, you're an asset, and the organization needs to see why you're valuable. So the question is like, how do you now position yourself as an asset? I think we can discuss further down the lane of how to build yourself as an asset in your expertise, even if you don't have all the years of experience that they're requiring, or you
Mm-hmm.
don't have all that. But there are several ways you can build that still around education, certification, among other things. We can discuss that. Yeah, I would say those are like
The
general tips. But then
Okay.
now jumping into resumes,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you
the
know,
actual CVs, yeah.
as a hiring manager, I mean, I feel like you
That's
you
like a
would
can
know.
of worms.
Let me ask, like, what do you think is the average number of pages people submit for their resumes?
um, I think I'd say two is good enough, not more.
Two is good, but funny enough, statistics states that a lot of people do not actually do that. It's usually around four, three or four. So the average number of people still go beyond what a hiring manager will want. And
Yeah.
the truth is, hiring managers have like hundreds of CVs to go through,
Yeah.
right? There's this statistic, I don't remember which company did it, but they were saying like hiring managers take around 6 seconds to skim through resume.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to spend six of those seconds to skim through 7 pages of
Yeah.
resume, which I have actually received very recently, 7 page resumes. And when I'm glossing over this, I need to find out like the information immediately. So keeping it to a minimum of three, I mean, I would say like two, maximum 3 pages. If you're very advanced in your career, then we can afford 3 or 4 because maybe you have quite a lot of things to discuss. If you're entry level to mid level, 2 pages is sufficient, so that it lets you know that these pages are of high value. They are a very small real estate. So you have to make sure that everything you put in there is impactful because it's such a small real estate.
Yeah.
Everything has to be impactful. Now, the question is, how do you make it impactful? You have to also guide the hiring manager. Make it legible. Don't have paragraphs there. Have bullet points. If there are keywords they're looking for, bold them out. Let's say they're looking for spatial analysis, they're looking for database administration, they're looking for, I don't know, ETL workflows. When you're explaining the different tasks in, say, your experience or your training, bold those words so that
Oh, the
as I'm
keywords.
glossing, if my job description has a person specification that says I need somebody who has ETL workflows in this and this and that, I need somebody with cloud skills, AWS is preferred, maybe Azure
Azure.
is
Yeah.
is desirable. You have to bold those words for me as a hiring manager not to overlook your CV and to say, okay, I'll give this a second shortlisting. I'll put this on the side to check.
Yeah.
But if it's all paragraphs there, I'm not even going to.
I think there's something else that I'd also want us to touch on, and still on CVs.
Yeah,
And I want to use, like, again, with reference to like GIS and our backgrounds,
yeah.
there's tools and then there's the skills, right? When you're, for example, applying for a GIS analyst position, right? And I'm the hiring manager or I'm the applicant. Let's say I'm the applicant. Have you had this scenario where when you go through a CV, you specifically can see the CV is about a tool and not the skill that this person has? So then it means that if the
Mm,
company does not have that tool, this person is rendered useless. And so an
mm,
example would be when I'm writing my CV, for example, and I'm a GIS analyst, I'm applying for a job for a GIS analyst role, and they've put in there very generic words, right? GIS analysis,
mm-hmm,
spatial analysis, data collection, all that. And then there's visualization and presentation. And then at the bottom, they've sort of put some of the tools they're using. And we know them, like, for example, QGIS,
mm-hmm,
ArcGIS, Kato, all those
mm-hmm,
components.
mm-hmm.
But then when you look into the CV, you find built maps using ArcGIS Pro, publish data to ArcGIS portal. And for me, I feel like that's sort of it's sort of something that would not necessarily guide me to that candidate. So, like, how do you differentiate that when you're writing your CV, in the sense that you're not putting yourself at a disadvantage by fully tying yourself to tools only in the explanations up there? I don't know if that makes sense.
I kind of see where you're going with this, and I think this is about like what takes precedence in your resume. So, and I think this would be, it may not be the norm, but my opinion is that it will be very subjective to the company. So say for example, just to quote a company, if you want to apply to Esri,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, then that would make
then it
sense.
would make sense to
Yeah.
have the fact you've done certain skills with ArcGIS Enterprise, skills with Survey 1 to 3, and the rest. If you have researched about an organization
Yeah.
enough to know their tech
Tools.
infrastructure, it would also make sense
Yeah.
to line it up with
The
that
tool.
organization's tech infrastructure if you've actually done that. But if it's like an open ended, you're going there blind, then it makes more sense to focus on the skill, and at the very end then you put the tools that you use towards it. Or you can phrase your the structure of, say you have an experience, you want to talk about a specific project, so you can phrase it towards how it can capture the tool as well as the skill, with a focus on the skill. So you can
Yeah.
focus on, say for example, I carried out spatial analysis that achieved this impact for this organization whose business goal was this, using 713. In the end, you have mainly focused on the skill, and then
And
at the
then
very
mentioned
end
it.
you've mentioned what tool you've
Yeah.
used. But like, yeah, like you say, to use that with caution, because then it can look like that's the only tool you know for like data collection, or AWS is the only tool you know for a specific cloud workflow. So it's just how it really is very subjective to the research of that job description, I would say. But then also the other thing, in terms of importance of a resume, which you can also let us know what you've seen from what people have put out there, is that as a hiring manager for a very highly skilled job or a tech job, do not put things like academia or those I don't know what are they, those awards you got in high school at the top. Because if you want, I know most people want to be chronological, they want to start from, like, their date of birth.
Yeah.
So they want to be chronological and offer us primary, secondary, blah blah blah, all these things, all the way down to their postgraduate, and then they go to their job. Fine, that's one way to look at it. But as a hiring manager, this won't capture my attention, because I need to know your most recent things first. And your most recent things are probably your work experience. And even if you don't have a work experience, I need to know your most recent projects before I can even go to academia. So start with your work experience or start with your projects, then put academia, and then put all those other publications and stuff. If you start with your work experience, it gives credibility to your skills. So, and to the tools that you're stating. So if you start at the very top with, like, I don't know, DevOps, data engineer, ABC, you're listing all the skills, AWS, this, at the very top, it won't hold any weight. But if you actually explain at the top the work that you did under cloud services, under DevOps, under all the different things that you want to state, and then at the very end, now you have the skills listed, then it will hold more weight and credibility when I actually see your skills, because
Yeah.
it will remind me that I read them in your experience. And by the time I'm actually getting down to the page and your experience was good enough, I may not even necessarily be that interested in like your lower level education. I would probably be only interested in like a master's or something. And so I will just look at the skills and mark you in. And it's so important for a lot of people to know how to structure the CV from the perspective of the hiring manager. Because if you only keep structuring it from what you want to tell, then, I mean, no, not to put anyone off, it's not that nobody's interested in your story, but you need your story to have impact. So it's about how to start it off.
And of course, there's like the obvious things,
Yeah.
fonts by now, fonts like
Fonts,
just use
spacing,
spacing, like it's,
legibility,
yeah.
you know.
The others are like, those ones remain key. Those
Those
ones
ones remain
remain,
key.
yeah.
You have to have high impact. Yeah.
The touchy subject of money. And when it comes to still within the hiring, right? I think this links to what you initially talked about, like these the what you're saying, like building yourself as an asset and the salary that comes with that. I think one of the biggest challenges I had when I was just getting into the industry was trying to understand where does my salary bracket lie. What should I negotiate for when I'm just getting in? What is too much? What's too little? I think why that conversation is very important is, even I realized it also affected a lot of my consultancy rates, because when you get in and you have very limited knowledge on, okay, how should I negotiate, you have no idea. So
I have
like
no
when
idea.
someone tells you, oh, we'll give you 70,000 or 60,000, it's like, oh my god, you like take the first jump, and then later on, after you're like inside and you're listening to people talking, they're like, oh yeah, they were actually willing to give you three
You
times,
know,
but
you know,
it's like,
it's
oh my
so
god,
disheartening.
they were willing to give me three times and I said 70,000 is enough.
You know,
So yeah, I think are there tips and tricks that have worked
yeah,
for you
yeah.
in just knowing, okay, like what resources or how should I navigate this? Of course, it wouldn't be very accurate, but like, do you have any tips around that as well? Because I know I struggle with that. So I please don't
Uh-huh.
throw it back at me.
Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Because I'm also grappling. I mean, I think it's a learning process. But like you said, it's so important to assess early enough, because if you accept a job for the sake of accepting, and then down the line you realize you cut yourself short, you're going to be disgruntled with that company, and you will start looking for another company in less than 2 years, and you'll
Yeah.
be repeating the process and you'll have just wasted time. So, what I would say in this case is take the time to do research on what exactly you actually are applying for. And right now there are a lot of online tools. There's chat gpt, there's also many things, so you can quickly ask questions like, what is the average salary pay for a geospatial developer in the UK? Let's say if you're applying for a company that's in the UK. If you're applying for companies that are locally in Kenya, there are those forums. Don't be afraid to ask, like your geospatial groups or your dev meetups. Don't be afraid to ask people who you're comfortable for advice, people who are your seniors for advice on like what do you think are normal salaries in this area, because the data might not be there, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially in this region,
Yeah,
it might be there, but I know for our region, one of the things I noticed with like what we have on there is there's a pay gap.
yeah,
Obviously, if you're on this side of the globe, there's definitely a pay
there's a
gap.
pay
Yeah,
gap.
there is
Yeah,
a pay gap
yeah,
online.
but that's what I'm saying. It's very important for you to, okay, to position yourself in a community that is in the area you're interested in, and creating networks with them, and start to ask on an individual basis here and
Yeah.
there. And I mean, you have to have tact in how you ask, not like you're asking for what is your salary so that I can also get that level of salary. It's more of, if I was this particular person in a company that does ABCD such as yours, what are the average salaries that people ask for or I should be asking for? And then also, when you're asking for a salary,
Salary.
the Kikuyu in me, a salary raise, you have to also know your organization. There are organizations that are probably seed or donor funded. There are organizations that are profit making and they generate their own sales and revenue. There are organizations out there that are non-profit and have a very strict structure. And so you have to know your organization and what it's willing to afford, because there are some organizations that if they deal with like donor funded budgets, they cannot move out of that budget. So you can ask, what is your budget for this project, as a consultant, for example. If they ask you in advance, you should already have a number, maybe a
Yeah.
higher number, and that's the research that I'm referring to from your community. But before they even ask you, you should ask them what is their budget, so that they can tell you, because most probably the budget they'll tell you is somewhere on the 20% of their budget, like not the higher limit. They will tell you the
The
lower
lower
limit
limit. That's
because they
true.
know you'll push, so they'll tell you the lower limit. But again, you have to have tact in how you're pushing for. You don't want to ask for too much, and also you have to, what is that word called, like you have to have that corporate speak. Don't be confrontational when
Oh,
they
very
don't offer you
important.
what you
Yeah.
really want. Don't be confrontational, because first impressions matter, and maybe what you're asking for is not available right now, but like in the next funding cycle, when we get other projects, maybe we can offer it to you. But if you ruin your relationship from the beginning,
Yeah.
that's
Then
not going
you've
to be
ruined it.
there from the beginning. I mean, but salaries, I think I'm also still learning.
Salaries are it's a constant.
It's, and like when I say you have to know your company, there's also issues like geographic refactoring. So if you're working for a multinational company um that is based here locally in Kenya and maybe based in the US or in Canada, they may be a company that does geographic refactoring, which is basically means that based on your region, they will refactor your salary to a lower or higher value depending on the living standards. And so when you're asking for a salary, knowing that this other colleague in US makes a certain amount may not really benefit you, because yours will be refactored lower. So you
Yeah.
have to know whether your company does that or
Yeah.
not.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't do that, and if it actually does geographic refactoring, what additional benefits can I get if I'm on the losing end? So you also need to know what other things around your lifestyle you can ask for beyond just the monetary value. That's also something really important. Like right now, I'm so grateful for the position I have because of my flexibility. I may not trade up for a higher monetary value, because the current thing that I'm looking for is a certain lifestyle.
Yeah.
And if my company is offering me remote working, then
Yeah.
that means it affords me that lifestyle. And am I willing to lose a certain amount? to be able to afford that lifestyle? Or am I willing to relocate to a different country if that's what's required for a higher salary? So all those different questions have to play around even the lifestyle and where you want to settle down
Yeah.
and how you want to live life. It's so
So there's
important.
trade-offs. You have to
You
think
have to
about
think of all the
of all
trade-offs.
that. I like that. And I
Mm.
like what you've brought up on like talking within your networks. I think that's very important. That's something I didn't learn earlier on,
Mm.
just getting into the geospatial space or into the corporate space. Is like there's this thing which now I live by that policy, but of course it's tricky. You have to create a relationship with people for you to do that. But
Yeah.
it's very good to create a relationship, especially even with people you work with, where I don't know why as I don't know if it's Africans or it's just us Kenyans. I feel like we are not open about telling each other people's salaries. Like, and that sometimes
It's
puts
a.
us at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
When I say people's salary, it's not like they're up to the decimal point level. No, it's just roughly knowing what your colleagues earn. And even if they're not your colleagues, people in other locations, other companies who are within the same position and how much they earn. I think that's very important for you
I
to have
think so.
conversations
Yeah.
around. It really builds and helps you understand what you should work towards or what you should negotiate for, and now decide, am I staying or am I leaving? I think that's very important. There's that meme I saw of like Ati, you're out here making silent moves. Please, sometimes these silent moves, you are the one sabotaging yourself. At you're moving silently. Like,
Yeah,
ask.
you're moving silently and you're moving silently below par. You don't know what other people are doing out there.
Ask people.
Yeah.
Ask people and be open to
Unfortunately,
give as
it's
well.
it's very much an African taboo. Money in general, not
Yeah.
just salaries, just
Yeah.
money, from what rent are you paying to what
Yeah.
monies are you making to what investments are you doing? Like money in general has been such a huge taboo. And I think obviously it will take time for us to shift our ideologies. But then it's also to realize with the changing technologies and the millennials and the Gen Zs,
Yeah.
we are more open
Yeah.
towards such discussions than
Yeah.
our boomer generations.
Mm-hmm.
And you will, if you actually search, you will find those, I would say, like mentor type role models you can discuss these
Yeah.
things with. And the community, the geospatial industry, people are out here willing to help.
That's true.
People do not
Yeah.
want to gatekeep information. So the unfortunate thing is that is there that space to speak about these things? If there's no that space, then you have to seek it out yourself. You have to ask these people. You're reaching out to mentors or to role models or to whoever you're asking for mentorship. You can also ask them around these kind of questions, like, based on my skills and expertise and experience, if I am applying for a geospatial developer, how much do you think I am worth? What is my hourly rate as a
Yeah.
consultant? What is my monthly wage if I was to apply for an employee position? It's so important to ask, because if you don't ask, you will not
No,
know. You
that's
will not
true.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jerry, I think I totally agree with that, and like the what you've just brought up on like being able to ask people what you should quote for, because I think that's information I really didn't have access to earlier on, and that's why I really thought that we should have like this one-on-one conversation on just how we've navigated some of these conversations that are somewhat sometimes very hard to approach at work. And so yeah, that was very helpful, and I really like that. And so this is really our view of how we've sort of navigated through the industry. We're still learning. I
We're
think the
still
rest of
learning. We're
we're
still
still learning.
learning.
It's a journey,
Take
and
everything with a grain of salt.
for real, yeah.
Reshift it towards your own needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll end this conversation here for now, and then we'll have a part two. So I think we'll break part one at this particular point, and then we'll just come back with part two in the next episode as well, so that we can have like a two-part series around this conversation with Njeri. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. I like the idea of letting this ideas and information marinate and simmer. And I don't know if people can come with questions on your GeoHabari page. But I look forward to going further into part two about really how to position yourself in the industry and basically how to build your evergreen portfolio, which now we're calling the career capital. So I think that would be an interesting conversation that would get people to know how to actually position themselves. Yeah, other than that, I'm really excited and I had a really fun time, May. I look forward to recording part two with you.
I like, Njeri, what you've brought up. Guys, feel free to ask questions before part 2, and then we'll try and address, like, have a Q&A section where we address that in part 2. But yeah, until the next episode, thank you so much, Njeri, for being here. We'll see you guys in part 2. Okay, that's the end of the episode, guys. Connect with us on social media. This will be up on Spotify. And so, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next episode, that's bye from Jerry and myself. Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.